Hey, what is going on, guys? It's Dylan from Airfare Gaming, and I'm coming at you with a branded deck list as well as a test hand combo video. We're going to quickly go over the deck list and what I run in my preferred build, and going first. Going second is pretty situational depending on what you're going up against, as well as what your opponent puts on their board. So I'm not going to really talk about that, other than the mindset of going second is to break their board, attempt to use Albaz to fusion summon with their monsters, and then OTK. So going first, we're going to talk about the Gimmick Puppet lock. Some people do not run Gimmick Puppet, so we will not be using that in a certain combo, as well as playing underneath Shifter. I do side 3 Shifter, and we can certainly play underneath Shifter with Lubellion and Dragoon. That is why Dark Magician is in the deck. So, without further ado, we're going to talk about the deck profile. We have 3 Aluber, 3 Albaz, 2 Nib, 2 Ash, 2 Cartesia, 1 Quem, 1 Tragedy, 1 Mercurier. We have 1 Albion, the Shrouded Dragon, 1 Kit, 1 Lubellion, 1 Sireneer, 1 Gimmick Puppet, and 1 Dark Magician for the monsters. As for the spells, we have 3 Branded Fusion, 3 Branded Opening, 3 Fusion Deployment, 3 Crossout Designator, 1 Branded in Red, 1 Branded Lost, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Call by the Grave, 2 Imperm, and 1 Retribution. For the side deck, we have 1 Granguinol, 2 Albion, 2 Mirror Jade, 1 Albion the Sanctifier Dragon, 1 Lubellion. We have 1 Rhinebrum, Titaniclad, 1 Sprined, 1 Mirror Jade, 1 Kiardis, 1 Dragoon, 1 Chimera, and 1 Lulu. Some people do not play Lulu, but I think that's a mistake. Lulu is a great target to send to the graveyard to special summon Quem at the end phase, as well as tagging out with Granguinol. Without further ado, we will go into the shuffling of the deck and pulling out 5 cards and what I would do with them. Alright, so while I'm shuffling my deck, I'll be talking about a couple things that branded players may forget about. The first example is going to be Aluber in the graveyard. So while Aluber is in the graveyard, if you control a fusion monster that leaves the field, whether it's destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can special summon Aluber onto your field, negate one of your opponent's monster effects, and then add a branded spell or trap card from deck to hand. And with that, we are now going to go over our first test hand, starting with Nibiru, Aluber, Foolish Burial, Fusion Deployment, and a Call by the Grave. So now we're going to start with the Foolish Burial to bait out the Ash, and we have a Call by the Grave for Ash if they do Ash it. We're going to go ahead and reveal the Granguinol in our extra deck, that's right there, and special summon a Cartesia in defense position. And then we're going to then Foolish Burial the Tragedy. Then Tragedy activates to add another Albaz from deck to hand. We're then going to normal summon the Albaz, activating its effect to add Branded Fusion from deck to hand. We're then going to activate Branded Fusion, summoning the Albion from extra deck by using Fallen of Albaz and the second Cartesia. So we're going to go for a Gimmick Puppet lock in this case. Instead of sending Lubellion, we are going to send the second Cartesia as a target to make Sanctifier. We're going to summon the Albion. Albion's going to activate. We are then going to banish Albaz and the Cartesia because we need Albaz and a light spellcaster to then make Sanctifier. And then following up with that, we're going to activate Cartesia's effect to fusion summon using Aluber to make Granguinol. Granguinol is then going to activate, sending the Gimmick Puppet to the graveyard. And then in the case that we did not use Call By, we will just set the Call By. And then for follow-up turn, we have the Aluber next turn to use to normal summon to add the Branded Fusion. We have For during your opponent's turn, we have the Granguinol to tag out for either Lulu or Kyrtis. We have during the draw phase, activating Albion's effect to special summon the Gimmick puppet onto your opponent's side of the field, as well as Cartesia. So we have a fusion. And then we also have Call by the Grave, just in case they, are playing anything that needs something in the graveyard. We can just banish it and then negate it. And then if they go crazy somehow and somehow out this, we have Nib in hand. So that is the first test hand, and then we will be moving on to the next. Alright, so while I'm shuffling this time, we're going to talk about discarding for cost. So a lot of cards in this deck discard. Let's say, for example, Fallen of Albaz and Lubellion the Fusion. So if you attempt to activate their effects, they're going to discard for cost, and then they have a semicolon in their text. Because they have a semicolon, let's say, for example, you discard Tragedy. Tragedy is not going to activate. But let's say you dump Tragedy off of Branded Opening. Branded Opening doesn't have a semicolon, so after the resolution of Branded Opening, you can create a new chain with Tragedy and the Alubra that you summoned off of Branded Opening, and Tragedy is going to add a Despia monster from deck to hand. So along with that, let's go into the next test hand. Starting with Fusion Deployment, Fallen of Albaz, Lubellion, another copy of Fusion Deployment, and another Albaz. So in this case, we have a little bit of options. We did not start with an opening to Branded Fusion, but we can work around with that. We can discard the Lubellion to add the Sarnier. Now, there's a couple options we can do here. We can summon the Cartesia and then Fusion Summon with the Albaz in hand, or we can summon the Cartesia from Fusion Deployment, Fusion Summon with the Sarnier, make the Granguinol. Sarnier's effects can activate, dumping the Retribution, and then Granguinol can then dump the Albion to send the Branded Fusion to the graveyard, and then you can activate Retribution to add Branded Fusion to hand. So we're going to go along that. So first we're going to activate Fusion Deployment, revealing the Granguinol, special summoning the Cartesia. Then we're going to activate Cartesia's effect, Fusion Summoning with the Sarnier to make the Granguinol. Granguinol's effect is going to activate to dump a level 6 light or dark higher monster from either deck or extra deck to the graveyard. And then Sarnier is going to activate Chainlink 2 to dump a branded Speller Trap card to the graveyard, sending Retribution, and then Albion sending Granguinol sending Albion to the graveyard. Albion's now going to activate, putting itself at the bottom of the deck, and then sending Branded Fusion to the graveyard. And then we're going to banish the Retribution to add Branded Fusion from graveyard to hand. And then we were going to activate the Branded Fusion, sending the third Albaz, as well as the second Cartesia. We already have Lubellion in graveyard, so we don't need that as a light target to make the Albion. Albion's going to be special summon, and then Albion's going to activate, banishing Albaz and Cartesia. To make Sanctifier. And at this point, you're going to then activate Lubellion in the graveyard, attributing the Albion. Lubellion's then going to set Branded Lost face up onto the field. You're then going to shuffle your deck, and then at the end phase, you can then activate Albion's effect in graveyard to set either Branded in red or Branded Opening, but in this case, we do not have a Despia monster to target or Fallen of Albaz for the Branded in red. and we already used Retribution, so I'm just simply going to set a branded opening. And then leave the Cartesia in the graveyard for the Albion, the Sanctifier Dragon. And during your opponent's turn, you have quite a few things that's going to happen here. You have Albion's effect. During your opponent's draw phase, you can special summon the Cartesia, as well as the Sarnir onto your opponent's side of the field. And then you can activate Cartesia's effect to fusion summon, and then whatever you end up fusioning summoning for, you can activate Lost to then add the Mercurier to your hand. And then you also have Granguinal that can tag out for either Lulu or Kiertis. And then for whatever reason that you need to activate Branded Opening during your opponent's turn, you can activate that special summon by discarding a Fallen of Albaz to then special summon a Luber, and then adding, let's say, Branded Red or Branded Fusion. And you could activate Branded Opening prior to activating Sanctifier, and then using this as a target to fusion summon. And you could essentially fusion summon Albion onto their field, as well as Fallen of Albaz, and then use Fallen of Albaz's effect by discarding, let's say, another Fallen of Albaz as discard cost to then fusion summon for a Mirror Jade. There's quite a few options. It really depends on what they're going to do. I would be a little bit more reactive in this case by using Sanctifier instead of being proactive. So I would essentially maybe activate the opening first, summoning a Luber, and then dumping the Fallen of Albaz engraved as a target for Sanctifier, and then end up seeing what they do and react from there. So in this case, we will now move on to the next test hand. Alright, so while I'm shuffling, I'm going to explain why I have Dimension Shifter out. So in this test hand, we're going to attempt to play underneath a shifter, and especially a shifter that we activated. While we're shuffling, we're also going to talk about more things that people may forget about while playing Branded. So let's talk about Despian, Kiertis, and Masquerade. So while Masquerade is in your graveyard, if your opponent controls essentially any kind of monster that's from the extra deck, you can just special summon Masquerade. You can do it during the battle phase and just put them on the board to block attacks and survive. And then let's say Kiertis ends up being destroyed and sent to the graveyard, for example. Kiertis can activate and special summon a Fallen of Albaz from the deck onto the field, and then you can fusion summon using Fallen of Albaz. Alright, let's go into the test hand. So starting off, we're going to start with the shifter, a crossout designator, a second copy of crossout designator, a Luber, and Cartesia. So going in blind, or let's say you're going game 3 or game 2 and you sided in the shifter, you can then activate the shifter if you know that it's going to hurt your opponent, sending that to the graveyard. And then we can normal summon a Luber, add the Branded Fusion, and then we can activate the Branded Fusion, sending Albaz and Dark Magician to the graveyard. Correction, it won't be to the graveyard, it'll be banished because of shifter. And then, because we made Albaz with another dark monster, we're going to send Lubellion. Lubellion's going to activate, discarding for cost, and because it's not going to the graveyard, it will end up banished. We are then going to shuffle back Albaz and Dark Magician for the Dragoon. And now in this case, you can just set the second crossout designator and then leave one card in hand for the Dragoon negate. And because it was made with a normal monster, during your follow-up turn, you can pop one card on your opponent's side of the field. And now you have one Omni negate and crossout designator. Let's say you're going up against another branded player. You hit the Branded Fusion, they're just going to lose. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is how we do some test hands. We made the Gimmick Puppet Lock. We made a Sanctifier play for follow up on your opponent's turn without the Gimmick puppet. And then we also made the Dragoon play playing underneath Shifter. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys want to see anything more, just let me know in the comments down below. If you think I did a good job, please let me know. And if there is anything else that I could do in the future for branded content, throw it down in the comments. Other than that, I'll see you guys later. Peace.